By late 1943, as World War II entered a decisive phase in Europe, the Allied commanders recognized that the battle to reclaim Western Europe from Nazi Germany would not be an ordinary clash of armies, but rather a complex contest of wits, where information, strategy, and deception would play decisive roles. At this critical moment, the Joint Chiefs of Staff, under the leadership of General Dwight D. Eisenhower, began developing plans for the invasion of France. German defensive strategy relied heavily on predicting the timing and location of Allied landings. Eisenhower and his advisors understood that without successfully deceiving the Germans, Allied casualties would soar and the risk of failure would be immense. Thus, in December 1943, Operation Bodyguard, a comprehensive deception plan, was approved, marking a new phase in psychological warfare and strategic deception. Operation Bodyguard was not a single operation, but a vast and intricate network of sub-operations designed to shield the D-Day invasion by creating illusions of false forces and false landing sites. Its goal was clear: to scatter German forces, leaving them unable to predict the true invasion point. Among its sub-operations, the most notable was Operation Fortitude, which was divided into two branches, Fortitude North and Fortitude South. Fortitude North aimed to convince the Germans that the Allies would invade Norway, forcing them to keep troops in the north, while Fortitude South suggested that Pas-de-Calais, the closest point to Britain, would be the main landing site, causing the Germans to retain large reserves there instead of moving them to Normandy. Carrying out such a massive deception required the tight integration of intelligence, double agents, visual trickery, and even artistry. This led to the creation of a unique unit later known as the Ghost Army. On January 20, 1944, the 23rd Headquarters Special Troops was activated at Camp Forest, Tennessee. Unlike typical combat units, the Ghost Army was a collection of engineers, artists, photographers, designers, and creative specialists recruited from America's top art schools. They were individuals with the creative mindset and technical skills necessary to execute complex deception operations. The mission of the Ghost Army was extraordinary: to transform real U.S. Army units into illusions, convincing the Germans that large forces were stationed in one area, while in reality the true forces were maneuvering or concentrating elsewhere. To achieve this, they employed a variety of unconventional tools. One of their most important was inflatable military equipment. Fake Sherman tanks, self-propelled guns, trucks, and other gear made from rubber and canvas weighed only about 93 pounds each, light enough to transport and quickly deploy, yet realistic enough to fool German aerial reconnaissance. In addition, the Ghost Army used pre-recorded sound effects, simulating the rumble of tanks, trucks, mortars, and other military activity, broadcast from specially equipped vehicles strategically positioned across fake staging areas. They also operated dummy radio networks, transmitting coded chatter mimicking real divisions, further convincing the Germans that large formations were active on the ground. Alongside the Ghost Army, the Allies' network of double agents worked in tandem to reinforce the deception. Among them, Juan Pujol Garcia, codenamed Garbo, was one of the most influential. Garbo fabricated an entire imaginary network of 27 sub-agents, feeding false intelligence to the Germans. His reports blended real and fake information so skillfully that the Germans were completely taken in. Other agents, such as Dusko Popov, Tricycle, and Roman Chernyavsky, Brutus, also played crucial roles, supplying misleading data that shaped German perceptions of when and where the landings would occur. As D-Day drew near, the Ghost Army and Operation Fortitude reached their peak. They constructed fake camps, dummy headquarters, bogus supply depots, and even inflatable landing craft, all designed to create the illusion of a massive invasion force poised at Pas-de-Calais. Loudspeakers broadcast convincing military noises, while phantom radio traffic provided further confirmation. The deceptions were so convincing that German reconnaissance, and even Hitler and his top commanders, believed the main invasion would strike at Pas-de-Calais, causing them to hold back hundreds of thousands of troops there instead of moving them to Normandy. The success of Operation Bodyguard, Fortitude, and the Ghost Army lay not only in ensuring the safety of the Normandy landings, but also in reducing Allied casualties. In fact, the Ghost Army repeatedly employed battlefield deception to lure German forces into striking false targets, enabling genuine Allied units to maneuver freely. In one instance, only about 600 Ghost Army personnel created the illusion of 15,000 troops, tricking the Germans into dispersing their firepower against non-existent formations. The Ghost Army was more than a tactical innovation. It was proof that art, creativity, and strategy could merge to achieve wartime objectives. Many members went on to become celebrated figures, such as Bill Blass in fashion, Ellsworth Kelly in minimalist art, and Art Kane in photography. Their unique talents had played a critical role in one of the most successful deception campaigns in military history. After the war, the Ghost Army's operations remained classified for decades, only gradually being declassified between the 1970s and 1996. In 2024, Ghost Army veterans were officially awarded the Congressional Gold Medal, recognizing their vital contribution to the Normandy victory and their unique role in modern warfare. Their legacy proved that information, perception, and sophisticated deception could outweigh sheer firepower, and that in modern war, tricking the enemy could determine the fate of entire campaigns. From the preparations for D-Day to the formation of the Ghost Army, from fake radio chatter to inflatable tanks, every element was part of a chain of events without which D-Day could not have succeeded with such scale and effectiveness. This stands as a powerful reminder that modern warfare is not just a clash of guns and tanks, but also a war of information and perception, where victory belongs to those who master intelligence, creativity, and deception. On the morning of June 6, 1944, more than 156,000 Allied soldiers from Britain, the United States, Canada, and several other nations landed on the beaches of Normandy, launching the largest amphibious invasion in human history. This was the result of months of preparation, training troops, transporting equipment, refining military strategy, and executing an unprecedented deception campaign. Operation Bodyguard. Within this vast deception, Fortitude South played the crucial role of convincing the Germans that the main invasion would come at Pas-de-Calais, not Normandy. As dawn broke over the beaches of Omaha, Utah, Gold, Juno, and Sword, German forces remained trapped in the illusion created by Operation Bodyguard. Fueled by false intelligence from the double agent Garbo and the elaborate illusions staged by the Ghost Army, Hitler kept a large portion of his reserves in Pas-de-Calais. This left the defenses in Normandy weaker than expected, significantly reducing the immediate resistance the Allies encountered in the critical first hours. Before the troops landed, Allied air and naval forces carried out massive support operations. Squadrons of B-17 and B-24 bombers targeted coastal gun emplacements, railways, and German supply depots. Meanwhile, offshore warships bombarded the beaches to destroy fortifications and soften defenses. Yet one of the key factors behind the invasion's early success was not sheer firepower, but the deception strategies engineered by the Ghost Army and Fortitude South. In the days before D-Day, the Ghost Army deployed inflatable dummy equipment, such as Sherman tanks and self-propelled artillery, across mock camps in Kent and Sussex. From the air, German reconnaissance pilots observed these scenes and reported back to Berlin that a massive invasion force was massing in southeastern England, poised to cross the Channel at Pas-de-Calais. Combined with Garbo's fabricated reports and the work of other double agents, these false impressions convinced Rommel and Hitler that Calais was the true target. As a result, German reserves were not moved to Normandy in time, giving the Allies a crucial strategic edge. Meanwhile, Allied forces pressed toward the beaches. At Omaha, American troops faced brutal German defenses of concrete bunkers and withering fire. Yet because German reinforcements were delayed, the Americans managed to carve out a foothold inland. At Utah, U.S. forces landed close to their planned zone and faced lighter opposition, since German defenses were concentrated elsewhere. On Gold, Juno, and Sword beaches, British and Canadian forces came ashore, secured their positions, and pushed inland, proof of both thorough preparation and the effectiveness of deception. The deception did not end once the landings began. The Ghost Army continued transmitting false radio signals and staging simulated troop movements aimed toward Pas-de-Calais, maintaining the illusion that the main invasion force had yet to appear. Aerial reconnaissance photos even captured images of what looked like an army on the move across Kent, Sussex, and Surrey. For 2 weeks after D-Day, the Germans held their reserves at Calais, relieving pressure on the Allied beachheads and allowing rapid consolidation of the Normandy lodgment. One lesser-known but vital element was the use of simulated sound. The Ghost Army broadcast recordings of tanks, trucks, and artillery movements from multiple directions. German pilots flying overhead heard the roar of an enormous force in motion. Combined with dummy radio chatter and inflatable equipment, this reinforced the belief that Calais was the true target. Even seasoned commanders like Rommel were deceived, keeping their reserves in place instead of rushing them to Normandy. For weeks after D-Day, the deception held. German reinforcements trickled in too slowly, unable to mount a concentrated counterattack. The Allies exploited this delay to fortify their positions, expand supply lines, and prepare for further offensives. Deception extended beyond Calais. Fortitude North continued suggesting an invasion of Norway, tying down German forces in Scandinavia and away from Western Europe. The Ghost Army often operated close to the front, sometimes only a few miles from German lines. Moving under cover of darkness, they set up dummy tanks, broadcast radio chatter, and then withdrew before detection. These missions required flawless precision and coordination with real combat units. They were not just artists and engineers, but also soldiers in spirit, knowing that a single mistake could expose the deception and jeopardize the entire campaign. As Allied forces pushed deeper into Normandy, deception shifted to new tactics: psychological pressure and dispersal of German forces. Ghost Army units staged false hotspots behind the lines, complete with dummy tanks and fake troop concentrations, sometimes supported by simulated artillery barrages. These tricks forced the Germans to spread their forces thin, preventing them from concentrating strength against real Allied advances. One striking example occurred near Sainte-Mère-Église and Carentan, where the Ghost Army simulated the presence of a large division preparing to strike from another direction. While the Germans braced for an attack that never came, actual Allied units seized key positions, aided by air power that crippled German counterattacks. Such successes not only reduced casualties but also boosted Allied morale, as soldiers witnessed their elaborate preparations yielding tangible battlefield results. The success of deception on D-Day demonstrated a fundamental truth of modern warfare. Information and perception can outweigh brute force. Had the Allies relied solely on military might, they would have faced denser defenses and suffered far heavier losses. Instead, through the efforts of the Ghost Army, Fortitude South and North, and the intricate double-agent network, the Allies were able to misdirect German strength, exploit weaknesses, and achieve maximum strategic effect. In the weeks following the landings, the Ghost Army continued redeploying their equipment and signals to sustain the illusion of additional forces. These operations extended the impact of Operation Bodyguard and set the stage for the liberation of Paris and the advance into Germany. The Germans, thoroughly deceived, never succeeded in concentrating enough force to halt the Allied momentum. With Normandy secured and German forces scattered, the Allies pushed forward, American forces advancing toward Saint-Lô, while British and Canadian troops pressed toward Caen. All the while, the Ghost Army maintained its deception operations, ensuring that subsequent offensives unfolded with reduced opposition. The Normandy campaign thus stands as powerful proof that the combination of strategy, deception, and intelligence can reshape the battlefield and pave the way for ultimate victory in Western Europe. After the tense days of the Normandy landings, the Allies began to expand their zones of control, fortify strongpoints, and push deeper into the French interior. The close coordination between infantry, tanks, air power, naval forces, and deception units created a chain of successive victories, allowing the Allies to maintain strategic superiority. The fierce battles, though costly, proved that intelligence, tactics, and thorough preparation could sometimes outweigh raw firepower on the battlefield. Soon after expanding the beachheads, American and British units advanced toward St. Lo, a key strategic point for breaking the German defensive line. The battle for St. Lo was brutal. Although misled about the main landing site, the Germans still mounted fierce resistance. The city became a symbol of resilience and determination for both sides. Thanks to air superiority, accurate artillery fire, and effective infantry-tank coordination, the Allies finally captured St. Lo, opening the way for a deeper thrust into France. Meanwhile, the Ghost Army continued to play a crucial role in sustaining psychological pressure on German forces. They deployed dummy tanks, broadcast fake radio signals, and created the illusion of large-scale attacks in areas far from the front. This forced the Germans to disperse their forces and keep reserves in multiple locations, giving the Allies freedom to maneuver without facing concentrated counterattacks. These little-known activities were, in fact, inseparable from the campaign to liberate Paris and push toward Germany. By August 1944, as Allied divisions advanced toward Paris, coordination with Free French forces became more vital than ever. Paris, the political and spiritual heart of France, was a strategic prize that had to be liberated quickly. The Germans, though still present in France, were dispersed and deceived, unable to mount an effective defense. Free French units inside the city cooperated with Allied forces advancing from the outskirts, sparking uprisings in central districts that increased pressure on the occupying troops. The Paris uprising, which began on August 19, 1944, coincided with the Allied advance from the west. German troops in the city, exhausted and poorly coordinated, gradually lost control of many areas as Allied forces pressed forward. On August 25th, Paris was officially liberated, marking a decisive strategic and symbolic victory. This triumph demonstrated how deception operations and coordinated military action had profoundly reshaped the battlefield, from the beaches of Normandy to the heart of France. During the liberation of Paris, the Allies continued deception operations in the north and east. The Ghost Army and Fortitude units maintained the illusion of impending attacks on places like the Ardennes and Norway, forcing the Germans to hold reserves far away and unable to reinforce the Western Front in time. This strategy not only reduced Allied casualties, but also paved the way for future operations, such as Operation Market Garden and the Battle of the Bulge. An important factor in the post-D-Day period was the flexible use of intelligence. Intelligence units worked with the Ghost Army to monitor German reactions, measure their belief in fake reports and radio traffic, and adjust deception efforts accordingly. Every troop movement, false signal, or inflatable tank placement was based on battlefield intelligence. As a result, the Germans were consistently misled and unable to predict the Allies' next moves. These deception campaigns and the effective use of strategic information also left a lasting impact on how Western militaries waged war after World War II. The Americans and British learned that success depended not only on military might, but also on sophisticated use of intelligence, deception, and psychological operations. The Ghost Army and Operations Fortitude South and North stood as prime examples of modern warfare blending technology and psychology, ushering in a new era of global military strategy. As the Allies pushed toward the German border, infantry, tanks, and air power operated in seamless coordination. German forces, though still capable of fighting, were drained of morale and misled by false information, unable to mount effective counterattacks. The combination of deception, superior firepower, and coordinated strategy enabled the Allies to liberate key cities and prepare for the final push into Germany. One of the least mentioned but most crucial achievements was maintaining communication and coordination between deception units and frontline forces. The Ghost Army often had to operate close to the front, setting up dummy tanks and transmitting fake radio signals while real units advanced. These tasks demanded skill and courage, as even small mistakes could expose the ruse or cause casualties. Their precision and discipline significantly boosted the effectiveness of the entire campaign, proving that modern warfare was not only about firepower, but also about finesse in strategy and information. The lessons from D-Day, the liberation of Paris, and deception operations shaped Allied strategy in the later campaigns across Europe. From the Ardennes and Belgium to the Ruhr and finally Berlin, the Allies consistently combined military strength with deception and information control. This reduced their own losses while maintaining strategic superiority over the Germans. After the liberation of Paris in late August 1944, the Allies quickly capitalized on their strategic advantage to push deep into German territory. Although the German army still retained defensive capacity, deception campaigns such as Operation Fortitude and the activities of the Ghost Army kept them scattered and uncertain. Many German divisions were tied down in areas far from the real Allied advance, giving the Allies the opportunity to move swiftly through Belgium, Luxembourg, and into Western Germany without facing concentrated counterattacks. Infantry, armor, and air units worked in close coordination, reinforced by accurate intelligence, allowing the Allies to eliminate key resistance centers. During this phase, the Ghost Army continued to employ sophisticated tactics, deploying dummy tanks and artillery, transmitting false radio signals, and generating simulated battle noises. These measures not only misled German commanders about Allied troop positions, but also hampered their ability to respond effectively, leaving German defensive divisions spread thin and vulnerable to encirclement. Operation Market Garden in September 1944, though it did not achieve all its objectives, highlighted the importance of tactical coordination and deception. Its goal was to seize critical bridges in the Netherlands to pave the way for a direct advance into the Ruhr, Germany's industrial heartland. While some bridges were not secured as planned, the deception efforts and combined use of airborne armored and infantry units demonstrated the Allies' ability to wage multi-layered warfare, direct combat paired with manipulation of enemy perceptions, reducing risks while maximizing force effectiveness. By the winter of 1944, the Allies faced the decisive Battle of the Bulge in the Ardennes, the last major German counteroffensive designed to halt their advance. Yet thanks to prior deception campaigns, the Germans could not deploy their forces effectively. Misled by false reports and deceptive signals about Allied positions, German units faced unexpected resistance from reserve divisions held in place by Ghost Army and Fortitude operations. Although the battle inflicted heavy losses, the Allies maintained their strategic advantage and continued advancing into Germany. In the following weeks, Allied divisions pushed into Western Germany, liberating major cities such as Aachen, Cologne, and ultimately the Ruhr, the strategic industrial hub of the Reich. The combined use of deception tactics, direct military pressure, and psychological warfare severely weakened German morale, preventing them from mounting effective counterattacks. The Ghost Army remained active in key areas, especially near supply lines and command centers, ensuring that the Germans never had a clear picture of Allied strength or intentions. In March 1945, the Allies crossed the Rhine, opening the gateway into the heart of Germany. This breakthrough marked the collapse of German defenses. Deception units helped the Allies minimize casualties and maintain their momentum by creating illusions of attacks in distant areas, forcing German reserves to be misallocated. The blend of overwhelming firepower with cunning deception demonstrated that modern warfare relied not only on weapons, but also on information and the manipulation of enemy psychology. As the Allies advanced on Berlin, they coordinated with the Soviets pressing in from the east, creating a two-front pressure that the Germans could not withstand. Although Berlin was ultimately captured by the Red Army, Western deception campaigns played a crucial role in weakening German forces elsewhere, shortening the war and reducing Allied losses. On May 8, 1945, Germany officially surrendered, bringing World War II in Europe to an end. Overall, deception operations and the work of the Ghost Army left enduring lessons in strategy and the art of war. First, warfare is not merely about raw firepower, but also about shaping the enemy's perception. Dummy tanks, false radio traffic, and fabricated battle sounds allowed the Allies to manipulate German decision-making, achieving strategic advantages disproportionate to the actual size of their forces. Second, coordination among diverse branches, infantry, armor, air, naval, and special deception units, was essential for maximizing effectiveness. The Ghost Army and Fortitude could not operate in isolation. Their success depended on integration with mainline forces so that every deception maneuver translated into real battlefield effects. Third, intelligence and battlefield feedback were key. Every deception relied on observing German responses, measuring their confidence in false signals, and adjusting tactics accordingly. This proved that intelligence was not merely data, but a vital strategic instrument, determining whether entire campaigns advanced or faltered. Finally, these operations showcased the value of innovation and creativity in modern warfare. The Ghost Army, Fortitude, and other deception units transformed the way Western militaries perceived war. Victory was not solely about destroying the enemy, but about creating conditions under which the enemy lost cohesion, morale, and the will to fight. These principles later became foundations for psychological warfare, electronic warfare, and information warfare in the 20th and 21st centuries. Looking back at the entire campaign, from D-Day and the liberation of Paris to the advance into Germany, it becomes clear that Allied success resulted from the seamless combination of military strength, deception tactics, and psychological operations. Every advance was built on understanding the enemy, exploiting weaknesses, and sustaining pressure. The Ghost Army and Operation Fortitude were not mere support efforts. They were strategic pillars that reshaped the very conduct of modern warfare. When World War II ended in Europe, attention often centered on the great battles, liberated cities, and famous generals. Yet special units such as the Ghost Army, a force of artists, engineers, sound specialists, and deception experts, left behind a lasting spiritual and strategic legacy, little mentioned but immensely valuable. They not only reshaped how war was fought during the conflict's final months, but also helped define how modern militaries approach psychological warfare and information operations. Immediately after Germany's surrender in May 1945, many Ghost Army members returned to civilian life, carrying with them unique creative skills and tactical experience. They had been artists, architects, sound engineers, and designers, conscripted into the army to create elaborate illusions that misled the Germans. Deploying dummy tanks, fake artillery, false radar, and simulated battle sounds required not only technical ability, but also imagination and a deep sense of how the enemy thought. This experience later inspired modern military training in psychological operations and unconventional warfare, opening up an entirely new field of strategic study. One of the Ghost Army's most important lessons was the transformation of information into a strategic weapon. Before World War II, warfare was largely viewed through the lens of firepower, manpower, and hardware. The Ghost Army proved that controlling the enemy's perception could yield greater strategic effects than sheer numbers of weapons. Inflatable tanks and fake radio transmissions caused the Germans to scatter their forces, hold reserves in the wrong places, and make grave strategic miscalculations. Even when only a fraction of the Ghost Army was active, its influence on the battlefield was profound, demonstrating that morale and information could decide victory or defeat. The Ghost Army's influence extended beyond World War II. During the Cold War, Principles of psychological warfare and deception were absorbed and expanded. The U.S. military and its allies developed specialized units for simulated operations, electronic warfare, and strategic intelligence, seeking to gain the upper hand without direct confrontation. Fake signals, phantom forces, and disinformation became essential tools in intelligence, counterintelligence, and psychological campaigns. The unit also left a lesson in flexibility and creativity. They did not fight with guns directly, yet through intellect, organization, and close coordination with combat units, they could alter the flow of battle. This ushered in a new mindset. In modern war, non-traditional units, though not fighting head-on, could still have decisive impact. The same principle applies today, from cyber warfare teams and information operations units to specialized tactical groups running complex intelligence campaigns. Beyond strategy, the Ghost Army left cultural and educational legacies. Many veterans returned to art, architecture, and design, carrying with them the fusion of creativity and military strategy. Military academies began teaching deception, battlefield simulations, and information control grounded in the Ghost Army's success. Later studies revealed that military innovation is not just about weaponry, but also about strategic thinking, adapting to complex, ever-changing environments. Another vital aspect was the psychological effect on soldiers and the enemy. German troops, confronted with phantom divisions, mysterious battle sounds, and inexplicable radio traffic, often became disoriented and demoralized. This not only weakened their ability to counterattack, but also eroded their will to fight. Meanwhile, Ghost Army soldiers learned to adapt quickly, think flexibly, and cooperate across disciplines, skills invaluable in uncertain and dangerous conditions. Military historians regard the Ghost Army and deception campaigns as living proof of modern warfare's principle. Victory is not measured solely by numbers of troops or weapons, but also by the ability to control information, shape enemy perceptions, and optimize limited resources. Even in the digital age, this principle remains valid. Information warfare, cyber operations, and psychological campaigns are direct continuations of the Ghost Army's World War II legacy. In remembrance, the Ghost Army has gradually been recognized as an essential part of U.S. military history. Museums, exhibitions, and research projects now revisit their operations, not only to honor their creativity and courage, but also to educate future generations on the importance of strategy, information, and innovation in warfare. Stories of inflatable tanks, false radio signals, and sophisticated deceptions stand as proof that intelligence and imagination can triumph over brute force, and that modern warfare is as much an art as it is a science. In sum, the Ghost Army's legacy can be understood in three dimensions: strategic, creative, and psychological. Strategically, they prove the power of deception and information control. Creatively, they transformed art, sound, and design into weapons of war. Psychologically, they reshaped how enemy troops and commanders perceived reality, undermining their combat effectiveness without direct confrontation. This experience laid the foundation for new approaches in modern military training and strategy, from psychological operations to cyber warfare, and its relevance endures to this day.